welcome to this episode of HRradio. I'm Sarah from the HRO team, and today we will be discussing how organizations are rethinking hiring in a world where roles are evolving faster than ever. As talent shortages continue and roles evolve quickly, employers are rethinking whether degrees, years of experience, and past job titles are the best indicators of future performance. In today's conversation, we will explore the growing shift towards skills-based hiring, what it means in practice, how organizations can assess skills fairly, and how this approach can support more inclusive hiring, stronger internal mobility, and better workforce planning. We are joined today by Gautam Duggal, a HR leader in financial services. Gautam's leadership style is centered around empowerment, focusing on designing systems where managers and their teams use technology as an amplifier, not as a substitute, whilst keeping a human in the loop in the flow of work so decisions stay contextual, ethical, and trusted. Now let's give a warm welcome on HRradio to Gautam. Hi Gautam, welcome to HRradio. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope we can add some value to the listeners today.
Absolutely. Let's get started. Now, when we talk about skills-based hiring, it can sound straightforward. Hiring people based on what they can do rather than where they studied or what job title they previously had. But in reality, making that shift can be very complex. It can require organizations to rethink job descriptions, assessment methods, manager training, and even internal mobility. So now that I've begun with the bigger picture, how can companies hire for skills instead of credentials?
I think it's an age-old question. We've not been able to unlock it so far, but some organizations have. And I think it starts at the top of the house, and some of the companies that I have heard about or interacted with, they start with a very basic concept of let's bring in talent density. And that density is not based on just your credentials. It's also based on how would you operate in an environment which is always shifting, right? And once you get those leaders in the right space, then comes the reality of what is good today would not be good in the next month or the year after, right? So I've also heard about, dynamic job descriptions now. So you don't just look at the job description that you want to do today. You actually use technology and thanks to AI, to sort of come up with views of what this particular role would do 2 years down the line or 3 years down the line. And you start looking for people who could do that, not just by the virtue of holding a certificate, but they could come from various backgrounds. We've had, interactions with people who come from a pure fine arts background, now doing product designing for something that bank would like to offer or a financial services would like to offer. So it's no longer a game of just looking at the credentials or your certificates. It's also looking at how well can you offer. The organizations which are making fairly good progress are the ones where the talent acquisition practices have changed. For some of the places it will not be required as well. So I don't think everybody has to change. But if you want to move fast and you want to grow fast, then those are some of the avenues you got to look at. But it starts from the top. Unless you have talent density there, where people understand what it would take to go to the next step, everything else is just a nice presentation.
Thank you so much, Gautam. Now that we have a positive outlook, I just want to ask, what are some of the common mistakes that organizations make when you're trying to implement skills-based hiring?
I think we overcomplicate. We simply overcomplicate things. It could be as simple as just running, a hackathon and getting the people who could solve the problem today. And I'm talking about hackathon in an HR environment where it's not even heard of. Hackathon for hiring a head of HR. Why would you do that? But there are places who are trying to do this activity. It works for them. But I think the larger we become, the more complex our methodologies become, because you still want to hold on to the control. And that talent density piece sort of explains that not everything needs to be controlled and not everything needs to be monitored. You have to have less guardrails for people to explore more. But then again, comes back to your leadership, comes back to your organizational maturity as well. If you can try that or not. If you're in a space where you want to do a test and learn faster, please do that, because that's how people are interacting with jobs today as well. They are also trying to test and learn and see if this is what they want to do for the rest of their lives. The same for us. We sort of overcomplicate and we make it for the next 5 years. I think we just need to make it for the next 9 to 10 months and then pivot from there.
Thank you so much. Now, how can companies distinguish between skills that are essential on day one and the skills that can be learned on the job?
I think this is where the understanding of the business goals and the understanding of where your organization is heading is very important. Because anybody can run a script today and figure out what the job description should look like, how do I match my CV to it, how do I prepare for that interview. But they would be missing one important element, which is the business context of it. Unless you know where is your growth market, what are the kind of roles you will want to invest in, what are some of the roles you don't want to invest in, what technology you want to take up, what's your customer persona like. Unless that is very crystal clear and everybody sings the same song in the organization, it's very difficult to get to a skills baseline. Then you're still looking at, have you done this in the past? Do you have the credentials for it? Do you have a certificate that specifies that you're the best in HR and all of that? Well, this guy can, rescue the million people from war zones, but just because the person doesn't have a certificate doesn't mean they don't know what needs to be done. So you have to have an understanding of the business goals, and that has to somehow percolate down to your hiring practice. If you're looking for growth in a certain market, do you want people who would understand that market in the next 2 to 3 years, or will have the capability, gain that momentum about that market? If you're looking at technologists, would you be looking at technologists who can then work with AI and work with agents and anything that is going to come up next? Are you looking at that stack? Or are you still looking at the stack which could do the job today? I think that's distinguishing places which are high growth versus places which are barely surviving.
Thanks for sharing that, Gautam. I actually had a side question. I'm just wondering how and if you are educating your teams in ways where, CVs that are you able to distinguish the CVs that are made through AI, and are they going to be discardable or are they good enough? What are your thoughts on this?
I would not want to discard a CV which is being created by AI. That tells me that this person knows how to use the technology today. Okay? Some people have gone ahead and used humanizer or the AI to sort of humanize and make manual mistakes in it and leave typos. I think those are smart individuals. Okay?
Okay.
Just because we've created a gaming system and they're trying to game the whole thing doesn't make them bad people. Okay? It is us who created all these automated ATS, and if the score doesn't match to a 90, you're automatically discarded. All they're trying to do is get a foot in the door, get that equal opportunity to do an interview. And during the interview or the testing process, if you don't find them good enough, let them go. Right? That doesn't make them a bad candidate or they're trying to game it or something like that. Like I said, the more restrictions that we will put, human brain will come up with more solutions for it, right? I would want to look at a guy who's more entrepreneurial, a lady who can understand, who could basically make a 5-year-old understand where is our business making money from. Those are the people I want. I want those people who could do quick fixes. If AI is going to be a barrier and they can use AI to break that barrier, they're good in my mind, completely. But if anybody is discarding those CVs based on, AI has used it, they should be the one discarding their ATS.
Thank you so much. Now my next question is, how can we train hiring managers to evaluate candidates? So without defaulting the traditional markers like their university or their previous employer or job title. And how is this reflected in your organization, for example?
Well, it's a tough one. We've not been able to solve for it for many, many, many years now. I think generations now. But there is an innate bias about certain institutions because they just hold that, prestigious name. It's very difficult to take that out and say, well, if the person is coming from, let's say, next university, is as good as anybody else. That's not true. Obviously, they've proven their worth by getting into the university. They've proven that they can be hardworking as well. Nothing, I would not take that away from them. The only way we could train our folks is to make sure that they are not discarding the conversation just because the person doesn't have the degree from the quote-unquote prestigious institution. We should be giving everybody an equal opportunity. It's very difficult for humans to hold on and curtail their bias. I'm a human too, I can tell you. It's not easy. Mm-hmm. While that happens, if you're able to give everybody an equal opportunity to sort of come in, get their 30 minutes of time with you, and then move from there, I think half of the battle is won. Half of it will still be won on the job once they start producing the results. And I'm not saying people without the degrees are the best or people with degrees are the best. It's completely situational, circumstantial, but you have to give them that opportunity. Unless that opportunity happens, you would not know who is good. I think that's the only thing we could do as HR. I think that's all we could do in terms of our practice. But then I would also have an argument with people who say, well, we do mass hiring, we hire 1,000 people in a month. How can I make sure everybody gets their 30 minutes? Then, my friend, then you don't have to do this. Why don't you create a system where your team members are probably the first line of filter, right? So that you don't spend 30 minutes with everybody. You only spend 30 minutes with the top 3, top 5. For them to look at it. And the same also for those team members as well is when you're looking for your future team member, make sure the degree is great, fantastic, but also look at other elements. It should be an equally weighted thing. It should not be just because somebody comes from a prestigious institution, they're the best. Probably are. The probabilities on their side. But there could be one or two guys who did not get through the university or did not have the means to get in. Just give them that equal opportunity. Doesn't harm you, right? It only helps you build a future pipeline of people who could eventually join the team. It's not better.
Now, I had a conversation the other day with a friend, and they were talking about how, the future generation, they're studying and they're going through their studies right now. And what happens to the future of work, because now that everyone's turning to skills-based hiring, are we studying the correct or the appropriate courses that we want to learn? Because, eventually people are going to hire for our skills, then will our credentials matter? What do you think about that?
I think we have to look at it differently. So it's not one over the other, it's one layered over the other. Right? So your credentials, your degrees, your grads, post-grads, those would still be required. That's the basis of, you getting into work, because it would build that understanding about concepts, I could use as much AI, LLM as you want, but that conceptual learning, you understanding it inside out will only come with practice. And those institutions give you that space to practice. And at the end of it, they reward you with a degree, right? Which is great. I think that's required. That is your first layer of getting in. The second layer you'll have to build on your own, which is the skills, right? It is not just necessary that because you're learning philanthropy, learning HR, or you're learning tech, it doesn't mean that you can't learn about sales. How do you do brand marketing? How do you do digital marketing? You could learn all of those things on top of what you are learning in the institute. I think in the future, people would I would personally look at a person who could tell me how we could digitally market our HR initiative more within the organization and outside, rather than simply creating a lot of slide decks or frameworks, right? And frameworks which were created in 1980s. That was about 40, 50 years ago. They really work today. So we would want to do more of, let's get out in the market, let's talk more. So those skills you could build on top of what you're learning in the institute. That's where the skills, the future skills marketplace will come into play. People look at skills and go, let me just tap on to Sarah and ask her if she could help me design something like that. That's where you should be thinking. Don't think one over the other. It's layered. Unless you have the basics in place, it's very difficult to contain the skill sets that you will pick up from medium, small gigs here and there.
Thank you so much. Now, how should organizations balance technical skills with soft skills, such as communication, adaptability, collaboration, and so on and so forth?
Asking you all the tough ones. It's difficult because for each role, the complexity of the technical skill changes, right? And it's not just the technology. It could just be maybe somebody is doing auditing, then that technicality changes based on who their client is, which environment are they operating in, what kind of an organization this is. I would say two things. One is those technical skills are easy to build in terms of you could actually do a certification and you have your basic understanding in place. Right? There is no certification that I will put you through to make you a better manager. I think we've been trying this for over 110 years, making people better managers. We still struggle with it. Right? So we go back to industrial revolution, that's where it started. We struggled then, we're struggling today. Your technical skills are very hardcore, so your brain wires them very fast, right? But your soft skills require a lot of brain activity for you to do. I would say spend time in learning new technical skills every now and then, but also bring it to life by saying, if I have to make sure that people are on this journey with me, how do I sort of convince them? What would be my communication style with Sarah versus Gautam versus somebody else? I think unless you spend time creating a strategy for yourself on how you will bring it to life, your technical skills will pretty much remain with you, right? Then the larger adaptation will not happen. And your ideas will also remain. So while you might want to create a lot of efficiency by bringing in tech, by bringing in an RPA or something like that, just because you're not able to articulate it the way it has to be done, you will not get a lot of support. You might get a few who understand where you're coming from, but not everybody behind it. You can have a very simple idea, but if you articulate it well, the whole world will be behind it. So that's where people should be spending time in understanding. Doesn't need to be articulated. If yes, how? How would I say things out? Is it to my team? Is it to my leaders? And spend time and energy on that one. Knock out AI completely. Do a back and forth with AI saying, I want to say this, I don't want to say that, I don't want to say this. You do all of that, you practice it with, and I think then it will become easier as a skill to adapt. A lot of human skills, I would say, not soft skills, but a lot of human skills require us to practice a lot, right? We've been learning how to speak in childhood. I'm almost 45. I still don't know how to convince a lot of people. So, hence, technical skills are easy. You can, not easy, they're easier than human skills to pick up. Obviously, it requires time and energy. But human skills is where you will have to invest a lot more. And especially with automation coming in or artificial intelligence now coming in, a lot of those technical skills will already be taken care of. Then you need to sort of create the mathematics of what do I need to tell the world? How do I pitch this? Where does it make sense? How are we making money? We need to do all of that eventually. That's why leaders and people should spend more time rather than just saying, okay, let me learn how cloud works. Cloud will tell you how. You start.
Thank you so much. Now I have a follow-up question. What is your number one human skill that you think is the hardest to learn?
Resilience.
Okay.
Operating under pressure. That's my number. Personally, that's my number one skill. Anybody who shows resilience to me already has a lot of, I do look up to them, irrespective of age. I start looking up to them. Because in current environment where there is an outbreak of a disease every now and then, there are, countries who are not working together very well. Then you have these massive workplaces which are cross-border. You could have things happening at your own house. You could have things happening in your own life. How do you still maintain that calm and bring your best foot forward at work? Or even any place which you're a part of. Whether you're studying, whether you're going to school, whether you're working, you're retired. You're not just flustered by the fact that the world is going down. but rather you are more sane about it, and you look at things as they happen and sort of don't react. I think that's one of the hardest. In my experience, diamond will only be diamond unless you go through a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
So anybody who has shown that resilience to me, when I hear their stories, they would have gone through that kind of pressure in life where, smaller sequencing which would make me, my blood pressure shoot up, is very easy for them to manage and control, and they see through things from a very clear perspective. So I think that's a very, very tough one. And it's not just at the senior leadership level. I've seen some new hires, like right out of college, showcasing that skill, and I've been blown away.
Wow. Okay, resilience is one of the key takeaways I'm taking from this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, we're coming down to our final two questions, but what advice would you give to HR and learning leaders who want to start shifting towards skills-based hiring but don't know where to begin?
To all my fellow friends in HR and learning, I think we need to start looking at learning as a part of the talent ecosystem, because I still meet a lot of my friends in learning who still believe that point of learning is you come here, you learn everything, and then you go out and make a lot of money. That's true to the essence of, yes, that's what the job is. But we are a cog in a larger wheel, and that larger wheel is that talent framework. Unless that talent framework allows us to get the right people in place, get the right skills in them, we aren't going to make more money at the end of it. You will not see, business KPIs getting impacted at the end of it. And you will still be looking at net promoter score, how people like my training, they really like what I was wearing on that day, all of that work. They will still not be able to pinpoint, saying, after a leadership workshop, we saw attrition. After, a sales training, we saw more insider sales happening in the next 3 quarters. You won't be able to correlate because we still don't know the larger talent framework. And it's not, I don't think it's the leader by themselves, it's their ecosystem within the organization that doesn't let them look at it. So I think I'm trying very hard to learn about the entire ecosystem in place, to then see how, learning culture, workforce transformation, capability building, all of that comes together, and then we can identify some potential business KPIs. Once we are there, and then we are ready for future. Right now, we're still playing catch up with everything that AI throws at us. We're still trying to sort of catch up. And so somebody has created this plugin which sort of takes over and creates a career path. We should all do that. I think we should be ahead of the curve. We should be telling that 3 months down the line, this will come out. I can only understand it once and it's from an outside interest.
Thank you so much. Now, I have one final question. What is the most surprising skill you think will matter more in the next 5 years?
Can I say 2 skills?
Sure.
First one will be touched. Resilience. For sure, number one human skill to build. If you think you're the one who gets flustered by the first email in the morning from your boss and your heartbeat goes up and down, that's the skill to invest in. Think about, there's enough study and research and books available for you to start reading about it, prompt your AI or whatever GPT, and then info result. The other one that I think is going to be important is simplify. If people then, and that age-old methodology of stop, start, continue, that helps simplify a lot, right? And that will give you a very clear picture of what do I need to do for any situation. Because nowadays what happens is we create the solution before the problem has existed. So we create a problem for the solution, right? And then we tell the world that this problem will be solved through this solution. But I think everybody has to do that stop, start, continue in the future. What do I need to stop doing? Because there are better ways of doing it. What do I need to continue doing this? And what can I start looking with? So where it balances out with the resilience, I think simplification is just an easier way of getting things done faster getting things done more human way. And a lot of times we do things which are not even required. And going through companies, sort of how they change their culture, and one of the things that they've done is they removed the number of leaves. They simply removed it. They're like, well, I'm not going to keep a cap on this. You guys are mature people. If you could decide to work for us, you could very well decide how many leaves you want, and I'll leave it up to you. And that had a whole shift in the culture of the organization. Now, that's a very simple thing to do, right? Is treat people more maturely. But are we doing it? Is HR sort of the blocker in between to say, no, you've got to have policies. People will abuse it. Well, if they do, there are ways of tackling it, and I'm sure the organization did. But if you treat them well and you treat them like mature people, 98 out of 100 will not abuse. And they would be very wise about how they use that time. So I think when you simplify things and you have a lot of resilience to deal with things going wrong, you create an environment where people would want to work. And on a Sunday evening, they're looking forward to Monday, rather than a Monday morning looking for excuses to call in sick.
Agree with you there, Gautam. Thank you so much. That was such an insightful conversation, and I really liked how we explored not only the promise of, skills-based hiring, but we also talked about practical realities and integrating learning to an ecosystem, being resilient, and my final key takeaway was the art of simplification, which I think we all truly needed to hear that, honestly. Now, Thank you. Now, it's clear that moving away from traditional resume is not just about changing how we screen candidates, but how organizations should redefine potential, recognize capability, and build talent for the future. I would love to continue our conversation, Gautam, but that is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you as well. Have a good one as well. Now, to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope this episode gave you useful ideas on how to think differently about hiring, skills, and the future of work. Stay tuned for the next episode of HR Radio. Goodbye.